Hello, today we're going to be going over the close range meta for Season 3.5. We're going to be using MetaGen and then talking about the weapons outside of MetaGen as well. We got a ton of new people in here the last few days, so if you guys are really enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But let's jump into it and we will talk about the close range meta. Alright, so we're going to go over the close range MetaGen output for Season 3.5. This has all been updated at this point, so if you don't know what MetaGen is, it's a tool that I built on True Game Data that is basically a giant AI algorithm that will look at all the attachments in the game, all of the weapons in the game for a given type of weapon. So for aggressive close range, it's only going to look at the close range weapons, and that's just because this actually costs a lot of money to run the actual code because it's so many calculations. But yeah, you can come in here, you can customize your runs and customize your weightings even. So if you think ADS time is more important than what I have by default, you can put that in there. And you just press run and it'll calculate and output the ranked weapons for how you've set it up. I'm in the process of building some really cool things for MetaGen. I hope that I can get them out within about a month. We'll see. But should be, for those of you who really like to tweak with these things and adjust the way the algorithm is running, it's going to be game changing. I'm basically going to give you full control of everything, but hopefully that will be finished within about a month. But anyway, back to the close range meta here. So the HRM, as always, I said the HRM was dead in my video yesterday, and a bunch of people commented and said, oh, I've been frying with it. It's not dead. It's not dead. Well, MetaGen disagrees. 8.51, it used to be like 9.9. It was like the number 2 weapon on MetaGen. With the changes that they had, it is now 8.5. You can see that's like closer to the bottom of the list than it is to the top of the list. So it's dead. Yeah, you can use it if you want, but you're going to be at a disadvantage. So the top weapons now, anything over like 9.5, I always say is very viable from MetaGen. So over 9 is going to be pretty good. Over 9.5 is like a very viable option. So right now, even with the buffs to the Striker, it's still sitting at 9.12. WSP Swarm at 9.38. 445 with the conversion kit. This has a crazy TTK. We'll look at the charts here in a second, but it's at 9.55. Striker 9, after all the buffs and stuff, it's doing really well now. 9.68, very, very good weapon. DG58 LSW, this is an LMG, but it has a conversion kit that basically turns it into an SMG. So the Jack Nightshade rifle kit got a huge buff. I don't know if it was this patch or the previous patch or what, but it was a stealth buff. They didn't say they did this. WarZoneStats.gg, they found this and tweeted about it, so that's how I found out about it. I didn't actually test it initially because I didn't know anything changed, so I didn't know I had anything to test because it wasn't in the patch notes. But anyway, it has an awesome TTK and crazy range. It's a little slower, has a small mag, things like that, so it's a little harder to use, which is why it's not a 10 out of 10. It's why it's not the number 1 choice. I do think it's pretty much there. Anything over like 9.8, like that's basically at the top. BP50 with the conversion kit is 9.87 in the second place position, and WSP-9 after this recent patch where they buffed the sprint to fire by like 45-50 milliseconds, which completely makes up for the fact that it has open bolt delay. That brought it all the way up to the number 1 spot on MetaGen. I'm going to consider here, WSP-9 has a very slow fire rate. Those weapons tend to be very unforgiving when you miss shots. So I think WSP-9 is going to be more leaning towards a controller gun than mouse and key, just because controller with aim assist up close tends to just kind of, when you start hitting shots, you tend to stay on the target a lot easier than mouse and key, especially in close range engagements. Mouse and key can get on targets quicker, but controller will stay on target much, much easier up close. So I think the WSP is going to be a little bit more favorable for controller players. BP50 with the conversion kit is going to be a little bit more favorable towards mouse and key players, just based on how the weapons perform. DG58 LSW is going to be good for both. Striker's good for both. Core 45 is just really hard to use. MetaGen's not perfect. Obviously, you can see a couple little bugs here going on. This is a close range quads run. For some reason, the BP50 only has 3 attachments. The DG58 LSW, I tweaked with stuff, and I could not get it to equip the 40 round mag. It needs the 40 round mag for damage for mag. Couldn't get it to happen, so I'm not ever trying to say MetaGen's perfect, but what it does is it'll get you really, really close, and you can kind of tweak with it and try to, the ability to press a button and have an algorithm instantly spit out what's very, very close to the meta is very powerful, especially right after updates, because you can find out what's the best immediately compared to other people, which, they'll find it out from YouTube or Twitter or just from what they see in game. So I never try to claim MetaGen's perfect. It's just, it gets you pretty close. Sorry I keep teleporting from left to right, but I just got to put the camera in the right place for the part of the website that I'm on. So we're on the TTK chart now with all of those top builds from MetaGen. WSP-9 BP50 conversion kit, DG58 LSW conversion kit, Striker 9, Core 45, WSP Swarm. I have it on combination shot location and then 300 health. We are including bullet travel time and open bolt delay. And if you're wondering why we have flat lines on the left and then slanted lines on the right, that's because of a recent discovery by Exclusive Ace. I covered it a couple videos ago. You guys should absolutely go watch that video. That is an insane discovery. Kind of changes how we think about bullet velocity and things. So out to 50 milliseconds of travel time for the bullet. So it's based on bullet velocity. If you're going 1,000 meters per second with bullet velocity, 50 milliseconds, the bullet travels 50 meters. So out to 50 meters, you would be hit scan. And then past that, there is actually bullet lead time and bullet travel time. So I need to do a little more investigation to that. But that's why the TTK charts look like this now. It's based on that hit scan distance. And we also added that as a stat. So up here in the stats portion, you can see hit scan range. So for this example, this is the WSP-9. It has 610 millisecond bullet velocity, which means that it's hit scan out to 30.5 meters. And what hit scan is, that just means you don't have to lead your target at all. The bullet is instant travel. So if your reticle is on the target and you pull the trigger, it's going to hit the target rather than having to lead the target or worrying about bullet drop, things like that. So looking at this actual TTK chart here, you can see that the WSP-9, which comes out on top in MetaGen, is the slowest TTK. So red. I'll just toggle it on and off here so you can see. It's quite a bit slower than most of the other options on this list, but that's because of open bolt delay. So like I said, it has open bolt delay. Open bolt delay means that when you pull the trigger, the weapon doesn't fire immediately. There's a little bit of a delay there. And if we turn that off, so in some scenarios that matters, in some scenarios it doesn't matter. I would say that in most important scenarios it does matter. So, you know, kind of weight that like 50-50. So somewhere in between these two is kind of where you should be thinking this weapon actually performs. But I mentioned this earlier, in this patch they dropped the sprint to fire time by like 40 or 50 milliseconds, which is sprint to fire stacks with open bolt delay, because the way sprint to fire works is basically your character doesn't pull the trigger until that sprint to fire time is up, after you've, you know, pulled your own trigger on your controller or clicked the mouse button. So if you have 50 millisecond sprint to fire time and 50 millisecond open bolt delay, you hit the mouse button, 50 milliseconds pass, your character tries to pull the trigger. With the WSP-9, there's another 50 milliseconds of open bolt delay, and it would be 100 milliseconds before a bullet actually came out of the barrel. So those two things stack, but because they just reduced the sprint to fire by a bunch, even including open bolt delay, if I turn on sprint to fire here, you're going to see the WSP drops all the way down to being basically the second fastest, tied with the Core 45 behind the DG58 LSW. So that sprint to fire change was huge for the weapon, and that's why it is on top on MetaGen now. It's a little slower fire rate, but it has awesome time to kill. If you turn off open bolt delay, it becomes the fastest option now, which is crazy. So if you're sprinting and there's like a team fight going on, that's a situation where open bolt delay doesn't really matter, because it's not like you're face-to-face, one-on-one, both shooting each other at the same time. You're just shooting at someone that is, you know, in the team fight, and they don't know you're there and they're not shooting at you. So that's a situation where it doesn't matter, and it's going to have the fastest time to kill of all of these options in those scenarios. So just an interesting gun, the way it's balanced, and that's why it comes out on top in MetaGen. Looking at the BP50, so this is the orange line here. It has the fastest TTK, basically tied with the WSP Swarm, but it has much longer damage range than the Swarm, and it's a little bit slower than the Core 45 in yellow here, but the Core 45 has that binary trigger. So what that means is when you press it down, it fires a bullet, and when you let off the trigger, it fires another bullet. And it's really hard to get near that max fire rate. So the effective TTK of the Core 45 is much higher than what it looks like on this chart for most people. Now, if you figured out how to master it and you really could hit that fire rate a lot, obviously it's going to be excellent. Now, it has a small chest hitbox, so it just has like the chest hitbox value, and then like the arms and stomach are lower. So if I put this on chest, you're going to see that the yellow line, the Core 45, gets way, way faster. But if I put it back on combination, it gets slower again. That's because any of those other shot locations are going to raise that TTK a little bit, and it's just a really hard to use weapon. So that's why it's not popular, even though it has the fastest time to kill. DG58 LSW, this is the conversion kit in the blue here, and you can see right away out to 19 meters, it has the fastest TTK. And as I've said in a million close range meta videos at this point, the TTK ends up kind of being king for close range. You can have the best stats in the world besides TTK, but if you can't kill someone faster than they can kill you, you lose the fight in most scenarios. Obviously, all the stats are important, and MetaGen looks at all those stats, and that's why even though Even though it has the fastest time to kill and one of the longest damage ranges, it doesn't come out on top in MetaGen. That's because it has less damage per mag, and it's a little bit slower ADS time, a little bit slower sprint to fire time. All these things stack up, and MetaGen looks at all of that. But that's why it scores a little bit worse. It's still going to be excellent. It kills people so fast that it's going to make up for it in a lot of scenarios. Striker 9 is kind of in that middle zone between like the BP50 and the Swarm as far as TTK, so it's a little slower than those, but a little faster than the WSP-9 when you include the open bolt delay on the WSP-9. So it's in a really good spot. It's one of those weapons that's extremely easy to control. So you're going to be able to hit your shots really easily with the Striker 9 compared to, I would say, most of these options, actually. It's probably the easiest to use. It just has a slightly slower time to kill than some of the other options. I do want to mention the BP50. This has excellent stats. It looks like it's going to be amazing, but out at longer ranges, it has very, very bouncy recoil horizontally. And it's hard to reduce that with any of the attachments. I'll show you guys the attachment that helps the most with it when we get into the builds, but just keep that in mind. It's going to be great up close, but I've heard a lot of people don't really like it because of how it bounces so much. I think you can minimize it and make it okay, but probably a little worse just because of that. All right, let's get into the weapon builds for the top 4 SMGs. We're going to do the Striker 9, DG58 LSW conversion kit, BP50 conversion kit, and WSP-9. So Striker 9, I like to stay suppressed. I've said that in all my videos. I think it's just a nice benefit to stay off the minimap and stay quiet. There's 3 good suppressors right now for SMGs. Shadow Strike Suppressor, that is just no stats. All it does is keep you off the minimap. It takes up an attachment slot, obviously, and keeps your weapon quieter. So I like that one a lot just because it doesn't penalize you in any way. It just is a straight positive. And then the Sonic Suppressor S, I use a lot of my SMGs as well. 5% range, 13% bullet velocity. Now 13% bullet velocity, we know that increases our hit scan range by 13% now as well. So that's actually a bigger deal than we thought. 4% horizontal and vertical recoil penalty, and then plus 2% sprint to fire. Obviously, we don't want worse sprint to fire for an SMG, but 2% when you have 100 sprint to fire time is like 2 milliseconds. So it's going to be a super minor difference there. So I really like the Sonic Suppressor. And then there's this new ECS or quieter suppressor. So this does minus 4% ADS time, only available on SMGs, but it does have a visible laser. So keep that in mind. I don't tend to like to have visible lasers on my SMGs for multiple different reasons, but some people don't mind that. So if you don't mind that, then that is the best suppressor. I'm going to go with the Sonic Suppressor S for this. I'm usually playing trios and quads, so I'm going to use the 50 round drum. Might be able to get away with the 40 if you're playing trios. Striker 9 has pretty bad recoil, so we're going to use the Lockman Recon Series stock. 25% gun kick and 5% horizontal and vertical recoil. Really helps this thing feel a lot more accurate. Pop that on there, and then for the 4th attachment, the DR6 hand stop kind of counteracts all of the negatives of the Lockman Recon Series stock, so that's a really great pick there. And then the last attachment, you can't put a rear grip on this gun when you have the Lockman Recon Series stock. So if you're someone that likes to use an optic, obviously use your favorite optic for the 5th slot. The iron sights on this are not bad, actually. So I really like this Striker Recon long barrel, actually. It has 18% damage range and 15% bullet velocity. So much longer damage range and a longer hit scan range, now that we know that inside 50 milliseconds of bullet travel is hit scan. It hurts hip fire and tack spread, but like, unless you're using those purposely, in general, you're not going to be hip firing people very often or using tack spread. So 2.3% penalty to ADS movement and 4% penalty to sprint to fire. I think 18% range and 15% bullet velocity are absolutely worth using that attachment. So this thing's going to be really good, easy to use, consistent recoil, just a nice pick all around. All right, I've got this built out in game. Let's take it into the firing range and just see what it feels like. So very quick ADS time, very snappy. It does have a lot of vertical recoil. On mouse and key, I don't mind that at all. Very easy for me to control on mouse and key. I'm maybe a little bit better on controller actually than mouse and key these days. I've been slowly transitioning, but I definitely can still control vertical recoil a lot better on mouse and keys. So I do think this is going to lean a little bit towards mouse and key players or more experienced controller players, just because it has a lot of that vertical kick. Next up is the DG58 LSW conversion kit. This is the TTK King. This thing has a phenomenal time to kill and 19 meters of damage range, so it's going to be hard to beat this in most scenarios. So obviously, use the conversion kit. Now, if we scroll down here, you're going to see sprint to fire. Still 150 millisecond sprint to fire, so we need to get that much lower. ADS time's pretty good, so we don't need to worry about that too much, but thankfully it has attachments for this. So the 5GN tack comb, minus 20% sprint to fire. That's just an absolute must-have on this. It kills your tack spread. So if you're someone who's using this for tack spread, obviously don't use that. But get that sprint to fire down with that tack comb for sure. And then you're definitely going to want to use the 40 round magazine. So this only has 30 rounds by default, so we're going to pop on the 40 round mag. As I keep saying, I like to be suppressed, so we're going to put on a suppressor. The sonic suppressor is available for this gun, but the recoil is not great, and we don't want to hurt our sprint to fire either. So we're going to not use the sonic suppressor. This gun already has crazy range and bullet velocity compared to the other SMGs because it's an LMG conversion kit. So we're just going to use the Shadow Strike suppressor just for the positives of staying off the minimap. Now this thing has weird recoil, so right when you start shooting, it feels like the reticle does like a little circle almost. And I tried all these different stocks. So you can see that most of the slots are blocked. You can't put a barrel, laser, underbarrel on here. You can put a rear grip or a stock. I tried all three of these stocks. They all say they help with recoil, and none of them felt like they were doing almost anything for that little circular pattern right at the start of the recoil. So, you know, they still have great stats. So obviously the extended TP9 butt plate, this has -5% sprint to fire, which would be really nice, but it does hurt your ADS. It says it helps recoil, but like I said, it's one of those things where it's not the actual recoil. So horizontal and vertical recoil are actually like how much recoil pattern or how big the recoil pattern would be on the wall. That's what those impact. And that's not the problem with this gun. It's like it's almost like the firing aim stability, the bounciness of the recoil right at the start. That's the real problem. And sometimes those just don't help with that. And that's what it felt like to me, is that none of these really felt like they helped the recoil at all, because the actual recoil pattern size wasn't the problem. It's that little circular pattern. So try them out, see if they work for you. But to me, they didn't feel that great. They do have good stats, like I said. So this one helps with ADS movement and ADS time. So if you don't mind the iron sights, I don't think the iron sights are very good, but if you're someone who always plays with iron sights, this would probably be a pretty good stock option. Extended TP9 butt plate would also be a good stock option. But for me, I personally liked the optic that helps with firing aim stability. That is the jack glassless optic down here. Also, there's a search feature on TGD now, so I didn't have to scroll down to do that. You can just click here and say jack glassless, add that, and then you've got it. So this is what I would use. I think it's pretty good. I do feel like it needs like one more attachment. It's one of those guns that just feels like it just needs a little bit something else, but the TTK is going to make up for it in most cases. Excellent weapon, crazy TTK. Next up, the BP50 with the Jack Revenger conversion kit. Like I said, this gun has a lot of weird like horizontal bounce as it goes up the recoil pattern. Makes it feel really, really bad in some scenarios. So what we're going to do is use the Komodo Heavy. This is the best attachment for reducing that horizontal bounce. I tested all these attachments, and for some reason the Komodo Heavy helps the most. It does have the most horizontal recoil help, but even compared to some of the other ones that have, you know, 25% horizontal recoil, 28% horizontal recoil, for some reason the Komodo Heavy just felt the best by a pretty significant amount to me. So I think that is what most people should use. Obviously it helps or hurts your ADS time a bunch, but it's worth it for how much it helps that horizontal bounce on this. So we're going to use the Kimura Real 33 Laser Light. This helps with ADS and sprint to fire. That will make up for most of the ADS penalty of the Komodo Heavy. That is a laser that is visible when you ADS only, so keep that in mind. If you don't want that, then you can use a different attachment. But for this one, I think it helps balance the gun out pretty well. Rear grip, the TRST4 tape and the CCG tack tape are both good options. The tack tape hurts your recoil a little bit, but helps your sprint to fire a bunch, which we really need to reduce. It's at 110 or 114, which is not terrible, but it is a little higher than some of the other SMGs. So this would be a good option for more close range. And then if you use this gun at more mid-range, you're going to want the TRST IV just to get that bounce down as much as possible. For some reason, most of the recoil attachments don't feel like they do very much for it, so I don't think this actually helps that much. But it's better to err on the side of helping a little bit rather than hurting a little bit. So that's up to you to decide between those two. I also felt like because of that horizontal bounce, it really helps to have a good picture of the target the whole time. So because of that, we are going to use the Jack Glassless Optic as our fifth attachment, and this is helps with firing aim stability, which does tend to help with that horizontal bounce a little bit. So overall, I think this is just about the best you can build a BP50. It's going to be a little slower to ADS than some of the other options, but it's just a great weapon all around. Onto the WSP-9. This is what MetaGen thinks is the best, and Besides the slow fire rate, I agree with MetaGen that it is the best, but the slow fire rate is pretty penalizing in some scenarios. So I think all 4 of these weapons are very good in different scenarios. I don't think I can pick one that's the best. DG58 LSW probably will be the best just because it has the fastest time to kill, but the other ones are better at SMG characteristics, ADS, sprint to fire, movement, things like that. But WSP-9, this thing's recoil can get kind of crazy when you start adding a bunch of things that hurt it, so I'm not going to use the sonic suppressor. It also already has really long damage range, so we don't need to extend that damage range by 5%. So we're just going to use the Shadow Strike suppressor. This barrel is really good down here at the bottom. The Hiss short light barrel hurts your recoil, but like I said, only if you stack a bunch of attachments does that start to become a problem. So this helps ADS time and sprint to fire by a ton. Sprint speed, tac sprint speed just hurts your recoil a little bit, so I really think that's worth using. Magazine, we're going to use the 50 round mag. You probably could get away with the 40 in most cases because this has a slower fire rate, so a 40 round mag is going to last a lot longer on this gun than other weapons and carry a lot more damage per mag just because of the slower fire rate, so you could probably get away with that. I'm going to put the 50 round on there just because I miss a lot of shots. Then we're going to put on the DR6 hand stop. Helps with ADS time and sprint to fire time a bunch, as well as movement speed and crouch movement speed, so that's really helpful there. And this has quite a bit of visual bounce and visual recoil again, so to reduce that, we're going to use the same jack glassless optic that we've been putting on a lot of these. It does hurt our ADS time by 2%, and this feels worse than 214 milliseconds of ADS. I don't know if it's because of the type of animation that it has or what, but it feels slower than that, unfortunately. But 55 milliseconds of sprint to fire time is crazy. Like I said, you have to add the 35 milliseconds of open bolt delay to that. But still, even with that, it's going to be faster than most of the other SMGs. Yeah, this is a very, very good, slower fire rate, but very good SMG for Season 3.5. All right, guys, that is it for the video. I feel like I was super scatterbrained in this video, so I apologize for that. I don't know why that happens to me sometimes, but it does. But either way, I really appreciate all the support you guys give me. If you're new to the channel and you like the content, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.